Growing up, I never thought I would ask myself, how am I going to protect me and my kids when I'm not even allowed to own a weapon? Experiencing the flaws of the justice system is what drove me to advocate for criminal justice reforms. While many reforms are necessary and overdue, some recent reforms have had serious negative outcomes. We need reforms, but not at the cost of safety and justice. As a citizen, you look to the law for protection and justice from the legal system. Unfortunately, the U.S. criminal justice system is broken. With the overbearing flaws and the current system and outdated policies affect our neighborhoods, our schools, and our personal safety. My drive to educate for criminal justice reforms is my personal experience as both a criminal and a victim. The first flaw of justice system I experienced was in 2020 when I received a felony conviction for cultivating marijuana, which is an act that fell under Proposition 64. Yet, I was received a felon and just 2 years later became a survivor of a domestic violence with a gunshot, and I was faced with the issue of how to protect myself when I couldn't possess any weapon while the law enforcement investigated the crime. The consequences of my criminal conviction affected my life in so many ways, and it educated me on the outdated U.S. criminal justice system and how desperately we need reforms. Criminal justice reforms have the ability to change the inefficiencies, injustices, and outdated practices that no longer serve the evolving society. By addressing the systematic issues, voters must educate and remember we have seen in the past results of reforms can bring serious negative consequences and risk public safety. I'm going to break down the meaning of criminal justice reforms, touch on key policy proposals of recent reforms in today's news, and urge voters to take a closer look at the effects of reforms and if they are truly going to help citizens. Criminal justice reform is an umbrella term that covers all aspects of the legal system. It addresses the structural issues with inside the criminal justice system. There is many stated reasons for criminal justice reforms, including reducing crime statistics, overcriminalization, mass incarceration, victims' rights, prisoners' rights, and crime prevention. One component of the larger concept of the criminal justice reform is the sentencing reform. Its effort to change perceived injustice in the length of criminal sentences, to shorten an outdated and unfair criminal justice system. Another is the youth justice reform. It proposes addressing the way that the justice system looks and treats youth offenders, adapting policies and models to prioritize rehabilitation and prevent further criminalization and keep them out of adult court systems. Did you know that we have the largest prison population in the world? The US is 5% of the world's population and 20% of the incarcerated people in the world. Mass incarceration and tax-paying costs related to prison, parole, and probation totals an estimate of $81 billion. And add on cost of fees and bond and phone calls, that's another $38 billion. That's $119 billion taxpayers are burdened with annually. Reforms aim to decriminalize minor offenses and promote alternatives to incarceration, emphasize treatment and rehabilitation, and reduce the cost that has been burdening the taxpayers. Now that you have a better understanding of criminal justice reforms, I want to point out key proposals of recent reforms that had some negative outcomes on society. In the recent news, Governor of the California Proposition 57, the goal to enhance public safety by emphasizing rehabilitation within the state's criminal justice system and reduce overcrowding. Assembly Bill 600 and Second Look prioritize the reconsideration of certain criminal legal sentences of a term of 10 years and effect a scale back of collateral consequences. In 2016, Proposition 57 was introduced to the public as a solution for overcrowding and mass incarceration, allowing non-violent offenders the reward of good behavior and early release. But did you know that the justice system only sees 23 felonies as violent classification. That means that the legalization of this proposition could provide for early release for individuals despite the high risk and potential harm to the community. The consequences of criminal convictions can follow people for the rest of their lives. Assembly Bill 600 and Second Look and Clean Slate improves opportunities for people living with past convictions to obtain employment, among other beneficial factors of the social, political, and economic proposition. The passing of these reforms is truly giving someone a second chance, an expungement on their criminal history, and getting their life back on track. Reforms are made for positive changes in a flawed system, but what happens when reforms go too far or without proper planning? Can criminal justice system be reformed, or are making these changes just creating bigger problems? Among the pros and cons of the recent reforms, bringing don't just disregard don't disregard the cons. The flaws in the justice system are very evident and endangering the citizens' lives. Headlines like a career criminal given 10-year sentence in 2018, severely beating his girlfriend with a belt, in prison was found guilty of another violent crime, yet he was eligible and freed for his non-violent offender. 2 months after his release, he was carried out a mass shooting in Sacramento, leaving 6 dead and 12 injured. Criminal justice reform advocate who pushed for more lenient justice system in Pennsylvania has been charged with gunning down the mother of two. These headlines are crimes that could have been prevented if voters didn't pass a reform behind Proposition 57, which allowed the early release of both cases. Conveniently opposing facts and critical information has been withheld and often not presented when campaigning. This is why I'm urging you to educate yourself and get a deeper understanding before voting on any criminal justice reform. Remember, criminal justice reforms from form from the principle of adjusting the systematic flaws and issues, primarily focusing on the shortcomings and resulting in the reforms of carries new issues in justice system and the risk of public safety. My goal is to educate the importance of reforms by breaking down the meaning of the criminal justice reform, touching on key policies of recent reforms, and urging voters to be educated and remember the effects of these reforms. Are they truly going to help the citizens? Criminal justice reforms have the ability to change the inefficiencies, the injustices, and the outdated practices that no longer serve an evolving society by addressing the systematic issues. But voters must be educated and remember, we all have seen in the past the results can bring serious negative consequences and risk of public safety. As an American, it's important to know your rights, and more importantly, you must know the laws, regulations, and the working of the justice system. Educate yourself on the fundamental part of life. I urge you next time to do research. Before becoming a survivor of domestic violence, I used to view the problems in our justice system directly as a result of law enforcement. Until I saw firsthand, it's not law enforcement, it's the negative effects of our outdated flaws in our justice system and the urging and dire need for criminal justice reforms.